Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. It's the day 2 of a book reading series named as Read as RACHANA, and I am in the second day of reading this awesome book Becoming by Mitchelle Obama. So आज चाहिँ मेरो दोस्रो दिन रहेको छ अनि हिजोदेखि चाहिँ मैले मेरो जर्नी सुरु गरेको छु and till now I have read 8 pages. So just a quick heads up, if you are someone who is interested to read this book but do not have time or do not have this book with you in person, I would suggest you to continue this journey with me. So मसँगै यो जर्नीमा साथ दिनु होला if तपाईहरु यो बुक पढ्न वा यो बुकको बारेमा थाहा पाउन इन्ट्रेस्टेड हुनुहुन्छ भने. अनि म यस्तो बुकहरु अझै धेरै बुकहरु पढेर चाहिँ यहाँ भिडियोजहरु पब्लिश गर्ने छु. So I'm really excited to continue this journey. So let's get into it. मैले 8 पेजसम्म पढेको थिएँ हिजो. So I'll continue from the 8th page right from the next paragraph. And this is the first chapter, Becoming Me, of Mitchelle Obama. So here we go. I was about 4 when I decided I wanted to learn piano. Craig, who was in the first grade, was already making trips downstairs for weekly lessons on Robbie's upright and returning relatively unscathed. I figured I was ready. I was pretty convinced I already had learned piano. In fact, through straight off osmosis, all those hours spent listening to other kids fumbling through their songs. The music was already in my head. I just wanted to go downstairs and demonstrate to my exacting great aunt what a gifted girl I was, how it would take no effort at all for me to become her star student. Robbie's piano sat in a small square room at the rear of the house, close to a window that overlooked at the backyard. She kept a potted plant in one corner and folding table where students could fill out music work seats in the other. During lessons, she sat straight-spined in an uphold. During lessons, she sat straight-spined in an upholstered, high-back armchair, tapping out the beat with one finger, her head cocked as she listened keenly for each mistake. Was I afraid of Robbie? Not exactly, but there was a scariness to her. She represented a rigid kind of authority I hadn't yet encountered elsewhere. She demanded excellence from every kid who sat on her piano bench. I saw her as someone to win over or maybe to somehow conquer. With her, it always felt like there was something to prove. At my first piano lesson, my legs dangled from the piano bench, too short to reach the floor. Robbie gave me my own elementary music workbook, which I was thrilled about, and showed me how to position my hands properly over the keys. "All right, pay attention," she said, scolding me before we'd even begun. "Fine, middle C. When you are little, a piano can look like it has 1,000 keys. You are starting at an expanse of black and white that stretches farther than 2 small arms can reach. Middle C, I soon learned, was the anchoring point. It was the territorial line between where the right hand and the left hand traveled, between the treble and the bass clefs. If you could lay your thumbs on middle C, everything else automatically fell into place. The keys on Robbie's piano had a subtle unevenness of color and shape, places where bits of the ivory had broken off over time, leaving them looking like a set of bad teeth. Helpfully, the middle C key had a full corner missing, a wedge about the size of my fingernail, which got me centered every time. It turned out I liked the piano. Sitting at it felt natural, like something I was meant to do. My family was loaded with musicians and music lovers, especially on my mother's side. I had an uncle who played in a professional band. Several of my aunts sang in a church chorus. I had Robbie, who, in addition to her chore and lesson, directed something called the Operetta Workshop, a shoestring musical theater program for kids, where Craig and I attended every Saturday morning in the basement of our church. The musical center of my family, though, was my grandfather Shields, the carpenter who was also Robbie's younger brother. He was a carefree, round-bellied man with an infectious laugh and a scraggly salt and pepper beard. When I was younger, he would live on the west side of the city, and Craig and I referred to him as West Side. But he moved out into our neighborhood the same year. I started taking piano lessons, and we duly rechristened him South Side. Southside I separated from my grandmother decades earlier when my mother was in her teens. He lived with my Aunt Caroline, my mom's oldest sister, and my Uncle Steve, her younger brother, just 2 blocks from us in a cozy one-story house that he had wired top to bottom for music, putting speakers in every room including the bathroom. In the dining room, he built an elaborate cabinet system to hold his stereo equipment, much of it scavenged at yard sales. He had 2 mismatched turntables plus a rickety old reel-to-reel tape player and a shelves packed with records he had collected over many years. There was a lot about the world that Southside didn't trust. He was kind of a classic old guy conspiracy theorist. He didn't trust dentists, which led to him having virtually no teeth. He didn't trust the police, and he didn't always trust white people, either being the grandson of a Georgia slave and having spent his early childhood in Alabama during the time of Jim Crow before coming north to Chicago in 1920s. When he had kids of his own, Southside had taken pains to keep them safe, scaring them with real and imagined stories about what might happen to black kids who cross into the wrong neighborhood, lecturing them about avoiding the mistake. Music seemed to be an antidote to his worries, or a way to relax and crowd them out. When Southside had a payday for his carpentry work, he would sometimes splurge and buy himself a new album. He threw regular parties for the family, forcing everyone to talk loudly over whatever he put on the stereo because the music always dominated. We celebrated most major life events at Southside House, which meant that over the years we unwrapped Christmas present to Ella Fitzgerald and blew out birthday candles to Coltrane. According to my mother, as a younger man, Southside had made a point of pumping jazz into his 7 children, often waking everyone at sunrise by playing one of his records at full blast. His love for music is infectious. Once Southside moved out to our neighborhood, I would pass whole afternoons at his house, pulling albums from the shelf at random and putting them on his stereo, each one of its immersing adventure. Even though I was small, he put no restrictions on what I could touch. He would later buy me my first album, Stevie Wonder's Talking Book, which I would keep at his house on a special shelf he designated for my favorite records. If I was hungry, he would make me a milkshake or fry us a whole chicken while we listened to Aretha or Miles or Billy. To me, Southside was as big as heaven, and heaven, I envisioned it, had it to be a place full of jazz. At home, I continued to work on my progress as a musician. Sitting at Robbie's upright piano, I was quick to pick up the scales that osmosis thing was real, and I threw myself into feeling of the sight-reading worksheets they gave me. Because we didn't have a piano of our own, I had to do my practicing downstairs in hers, waiting until nobody else was having a lesson, often dragging my mom with me to sit in the upholstered chair and listen to me play. I learned one song in the piano book and then another. I was probably no better than our other students, no less fumbling, but I was driven. To me, there was magic in the learning. I got a buzzy sort of satisfaction from it. From one thing, I'd pick up on the simple, encouraging correlation between how long I practiced and how much I achieved. And I sensed something in Robbie as well, too deeply buried to be outright pleasure, but still a pulse of something lighter and happier coming from her when I made it through a song without messing up. When my right hand picked out a melody while my left touched out on a chord, I would notice it out of the corner of my eye. Robbie's lips would purse themselves just slightly. Her tapping finger would pick up a little bounce. Thus, it turns out, was our honeymoon phase. It's possible that we might have continued this way. Robbie and had been less curious and more reverent when it came to her piano method, but the lesson book was thick enough and my progress on the opening few songs slow enough that I got impatient and started picking ahead. And not just a few pages ahead, but deep into the book, checking out the titles of the more advanced songs and beginning. During my practice sessions, to fiddle around with playing them when I proudly debuted one of my late in the book songs for Robbie, she exploded, slapping down my achievement with a vicious goodnight. I got chewed out the way I had heard her chewing out plenty of students before me. All I had done was trying to learn more and faster, but Robbie viewed it as a crime approaching treason. She wasn't impressed, not even a little bit. Nor was I chastened. I was the kind of kid who liked concrete answers to my questions, who liked to reason things out to some logical if exhausting ending. I was loyally and also towards dictatorial, as my brother, who often got ordered out of our shared play area, would attest. When I thought I had a good idea about something, I didn't like being told no, which is how my great aunt and I ended up in each other's faces, both of us hot and unyielding. How could you be so mad at me for wanting to learn a new song? You are not ready for it. That's not how you learn piano. But I'm ready. I just played it. That's not how it is done. But why? Piano lessons become epic and trying, largely due to my refusal to follow the prescribed method and Robbie's refusal to see anything good in my freewheeling approach to her songbook. We went back and forth, week after week. As I remember it, I was stubborn and so was she. I had a point of view and she did too. In between disputes, I continued to play the piano and she continued to listen, offering a stream of corrections. I gave her a little credit for my improvement as a player. She gave me a little credit for improving, but still the lessons went on. Upstairs, my parents and Craig found it all so funny. They cracked up at the dinner table as I recounted my battles with Robbie, still seething as I ate my spaghetti and meatballs. Craig, for his part, had no issues with Robbie, being a cheerful kid and a by-the-book, marginally invested piano student. My parents expressed no sympathy for my who's and none for Robbie's either. In general, they weren't ones to intervene in matters outside schooling, expecting early on that my brother and I should handle on our own business. They seemed to view their job as mostly to listen and bolster us as needed inside the four walls of our home. And where another parent might have scolded a kid for being sassy with an elder as I had been, they also let that be. My mother had lived with Robbie on and off since she was about 16, following every acrid rule the woman laid down, and it's possible she was secretly happy to see Robbie's authority challenged. Looking back on it now, I think my parents appreciated my feistiness and I'm glad for it. It was a flame inside me that they wanted to keep light. Once a year, Robbie held a fancy recital so that our students could perform for a live audience. To this day, I'm not sure how she managed it, but she somehow got access to a practice hall at Roosevelt University in downtown Chicago, holding our recitals in a grand stone building on Michigan Avenue, right near where the Chicago Symphony Orchestra played. Just thinking about going there made me nervous. Our apartment at Euclid Avenue was about 9 miles south of the Chicago Loop, which with its glittering skyscrapers and crowded sidewalks felt otherworldly to me. My family made trips into the heart of the city only a handful of times a year to visit the art institute or see a play, the four of us traveling like astronauts in the capsule of my dad's Buick. My father loved any excuse to drive. He was devoted to his car, a bronze-collar two-door Buick Electra 225, which he referred to with pride as the deuce and a quarter. He kept it buffed and waxed and religious about the maintenance schedule, taking it to Sears for tire rotations and oil changes, the same way my mom carted us kids to the pediatrician for checkups. We loved the deuce and a quarter too. It had a smooth lines and a narrow tail lights that made it look like cool and futuristic. It was roomy enough to feel like a house. I could practically stand up inside it, running my hands over the cloth covering ceiling. This was back when wearing a seat belt was optional, so most of the time Craig and I just flopped around in the rear, draping our bodies over the front seat when we wanted to talk to our parents. Half the time I'd pull myself on the hairdress and just my chin forward so that my face could be next to my dad's and we have the exact same view. The car provided another form of closeness for my family, a chance to talk and travel at once. In the evening after dinner, Craig and I would sometimes beg my dad to us out for an aimless drive. As a treat on summer nights, we'd head out to drive-in theater southwest of our neighborhood to watch Planet of the Apes movie, parking the Buick at docks and settling in for the show. My mother handing out dinner of fried chicken and potato chips she had brought from home. Craig and I eating it on our laps on the back seat, careful to wipe our hands on our napkins and not the seat. It would be years before I fully understand what driving in the car meant to my father. As a kid, I could only sense it, the liberation he felt behind the wheel, the pleasure he took in having a smooth running engine and perfectly balanced tires humming beneath him. He would have been in his 30s when a doctor informed him the odds weakness he had started to feeling in one leg was just the beginning of a long and probably painful slide towards immobility. That odds were that someday, due to a mysterious unseating of neurons in his brains and spinal cord, he would find himself unable to walk at all. I don't have the precise date, but it seems that the Buick came into my father's life at roughly the same time that multiple sclerosis did, and though he never said it, the car had to provide some sort of sideways relief. The diagnosis was not something he or my mother dwelled upon. We were decades still from a time when a simple Google search would bring up a head-spinning array of charts, statics, and medical explainer that either gave or took away hope. I doubt he would have wanted to see them anyway. Although my father was raised in the church, he wouldn't have prayed for God to spare him. He wouldn't have looked for alternative treatments or a guru or some faulty gene to blame. In my family, we have a long-standing habit of blocking out bad habits, of trying to forget about it almost the moment it arrives. Nobody knew how long my father had been feeling poorly before he first took himself into the doctor, but my guess is it has already been months, if not years. He didn't like medical appointments. He was interested in complaining. He was a sort of person who accepted what came and just kept moving forward. I do know that on the day of my big piano recital, he was already walking with a slight limp, his left foot unable to catch up to his right. All my memories of my father include some manifestation of his disability, even if none of us were quite willing to call it that. Yet, what I knew at that time was my dad moved a bit more slowly than other dads. I sometimes saw him pausing before walking up a flight of stairs, as if needing to think through the maneuver before actually attempting it. When we went shopping at the mall, he would park himself on the bench, content to watch the bags or sneak into a nap while the rest of the family roamed freely. Riding downtown for the piano recital, I sat in the back seat of the Buick wearing a nice dress and patent leather shoe, my hair in pigtails, experiencing the first cold sweat of my life. I was anxious about performing, even though back at home in Robbie's apartment I had practiced my song practically to death. Craig too was in a suit and prepared to play his own song, but the prospect of it wasn't bothering him. He was sound asleep, in fact not out cold in the backseat, his mouth agape, his expression blissful and unworried. That was Craig. I'd spent a lifetime admiring him for his ease. He was playing by then in a BD basketball league that had games every weekend and apparently had already tamed his nerves around performing. My father would often pick a lot as close to our destination as possible, selling out more money for parking to minimize how far he would have to work on his unsteady legs. That day, we found Roosevelt University with no trouble and made our way up to what seemed like enormous echoing hall where the recital would take place. I felt tiny inside it. The room had elegant floor-to-ceiling windows through which you could see the wide lanes of Grand Park and beyond that, the white-capped swells of Lake Michigan. There were steel grey chairs arranged in orderly rows, slowly filling with nervous kids and expectant parents, and at the front on a raised stage where the first two baby grand pianos I would ever lays eye on their giant hood tops propped open like black bird wings. Robbie was there too, bustling about in a floral pink dress like the belly of the ball, albeit a matronly belle, making sure all her students had arrived with sheet music in hand. She shooshed the room to silence when it was the time for show to begin. I don't recall who played in what order that day. I only know that it was when it was my turn, I got up from my seat and walked with my very best posture to the front of the room, mounting the stairs and finding my seat at one of the gleaming baby grands. The truth is I was ready. As much as I found Robbie to be snippy and inflexible, I had also internalized her devotion to rigor. I knew my song so well I hardly had to think about it. I just had to start moving my hands. And yet there was a problem, one I discovered in the split second it took to lift my little fingers to the key. I was sitting at a perfect piano, it turned out, with its surfaces carefully dusted, its internal wires precisely tuned, its 88 keys laid out in a flawless ribbon of black and white. The issue was that I wasn't used to flawless. In fact, I've never once in my life encountered it. My experience of the piano came entirely from Robbie's quiet little music room with its scraggly potted plant and view of our modest backyard. The only instrument I would ever play was her less than perfect upright with its honky-tonky patchwork of yellowed keys and its conveniently chipped middle C. To me, that's what piano was. The same way my neighborhood was my neighborhood, my dad was my dad, my life was my life, it was all I knew. Now, suddenly, I was aware of people watching me from their chairs as I stared hard at the high glows of the piano keys, finding nothing there but sameness. I had no clue where to place my hands. With a tight throat and chugging heart, I looked out to audience, trying not to telegraph my panic, searching for the safe harbor of my mother's face. Instead, I spotted a figure rising from the front row and slowly levitating in my direction. It was Robbie. We had brawled plenty by then, to the point where I viewed her a little bit like an enemy, but here in my moment of comeuppance, she arrived at my shoulder almost like an angel. Maybe she understood my shock. Maybe she knew that disparities of the world had just quietly shown themselves to me for the first time. It's possible she needed simply to hurry things up. Either way, without a word, Robbie gently laid one finger on middle C so that I know where to start. Then, turning back with the simplest smile of encouragement, she left me to play my song. So I finished the first part of the first chapter, Becoming Me. So I'll stop here for today. अनि भोलि पनि यस्तै भिडियो लिएर म फेरि आउने छु. This is my everyday book reading series, Read with Rachana. And if you like my contents, please show some love and support. Hit the subscribe button, and hopefully you will also continue this journey with me. So thank you so much everyone for staying till the end. So much love and gratitude towards you all. So see you tomorrow. Bye bye. See you.